So we're going to build on our angles and our types of angles and have two other types of angles, linear pair and a vertical angles. A linear pair of angles, just like it sounds, is a pair of angles that make a line. Pair of angles that make a line. And how many degrees is a line? Right, a line is 180. So a linear pair is going to be represented like this again, a pair of angles that make a line. They're also supplementary, right? So they're either way, they're always going to add to 180 degrees. Pair of angles that make a line. A lot of times in our pictures, we've got multiple linear pairs. So this is asking us to identify linear pairs. Sometimes I say that linear pairs, they kind of look like a sunrise or a sunset here. So I might say angle 3 and angle 4 make a linear pair. Similarly, angle 5 and angle 6 make a linear pair. Do you see any others? You're right, I can go this way and say angle 4 and angle 6 make a linear pair. And then angle 3 and angle 5 make a linear pair. So in this picture, when you have like an X, you'll always get 4 linear pairs. This one here doesn't have as many. I see a linear pair right here. Do you see that one? Angle 4 and angle 5. Do you see any other linear pair? There's one more. You're right, angle 1 and angle 4. And it doesn't matter which way you say it, angle 1 and angle 4, angle 4 and angle 1, it's all good. There's only one linear pair in picture 3. Do you know which pair it is? Yes, and again, if I kind of look for that sunrise and sunset, it would be angle 7 and angle 8. Make a linear pair. So now we're going to look at some where we've got to find the missing angles. And you might be able to do this in your head. I always like to write an equation, x plus 65 equals 180, and subtract 65 to get 115. But you might be able to just do that in your head or on a calculator, and that would be fine. Similarly here, you might look at that and say, I know it's going to be 20, right? Because I can solve this in my head, and that's fine. If it has to have an equation, I'll say, has to have an equation. So again, I see a linear pair, so these two angles, 5x plus x, add up to 180. So 6x equals 180, so x is 20. Like we've had before, we're going to plug that 20 back in. 5 times 20 is 100. Wait, it's not 20, silly. See, I didn't show all my work. It's 30. Yes, you probably were like, she's going to figure that out, that she did it wrong. Yeah, it's 30. So if I plug a 30 back in, 5 times 30, 150, and then, of course, just 30. So those are linear pairs, pairs of angles that make a line. Our second pair of angles are called vertical angles, and we often use this picture of scissors to show vertical angles. Vertical angles are across from each other. Oops, I spelled that wrong, didn't I? Across from each other. And vertical angles are always equal. I'll just write that there. Vertical angles are always equal. I'll show you what I mean by across from each other. So these two angles, we'll just mark them on the picture, angle 1 and angle 3, are across from each other and equal. And they should look equal, right? And similarly, angle 2 and angle 4 are across from each other and equal. Vertical angles are across from each other and equal. So again, we see this picture of like the X, right? So which angles are across from each other and equal? Angle 3 and angle 6 are across from each other and equal. And angle 4 and angle 5 are across from each other and equal. 7 was kind of clear. 8 is kind of unclear, isn't it? It looks like there's a lot of them. I'm just going to mark them in different colors. I see angle 1, that's my and symbol, and angle 4 across from each other and equal. Looks like angle 2 and angle 5 are across from each other and equal. And then angle 3 and angle 6. If I'm using different colors, I think that's sufficient to show. But otherwise, I might have gone through and made like a mark or a double mark to show that those are equal. In number 9, again, I see this X right up here. And I know in every time I have an X, I'm going to get 2 pairs. So I'm going to have angle 1 and angle 3, 1 pair of vertical angles, and then angle 2 and angle 4. So that was just naming the vertical angles. Now we're going to actually put numbers in them. Vertical angles are always equal. So if I see a 30-degree angle here, this means across is another 30-degree angle, always equal. I know that 1 and 3 are also vertical angles, so those have to be equal, but do you know how many degrees they're equal to? Do you recognize any straight lines here? You're right, these two angles are 150 degrees. 150. And I got that from doing 180 minus 30. Angle 1 and angle 2 made a linear pair. And then I've got this across thing. So it's like a puzzle that fits together. So for example here, 125 is going to match the 125. Sometimes I say across the street, right? It looks like kind of across the street. And then how many degrees for these two angles? 180 minus 125 is equal to 55. So these two angles are 55 degrees. 55, 55. Our last one here is going to be an equation. I notice on the picture that I have vertical angles, and so I know that those are going to be equal to each other. So 2y minus 6 equals y plus 2. And I could subtract y and add 6, and I'm going to get y equals 8. But I'm not quite done, am I? Looks like I have a little extra work. So it asks me for angle ABC. That's this angle here. So I'm going to have to plug in the 8. 2 times 8 is 16. 16 minus 6, 10 degrees. So if that guy's 10 degrees, this guy's 10 degrees. And how would I find angles 1 and 3? You're right, 180 minus 10. So 170 for each of those. 170, 170. Perfect. So vertical angles are across from each other, always equal. Linear pair next to each other, make a straight line, and always add to 180.